Alrighty, beautiful and strong people. Welcome back to the Squad Mastery. Today we're going to talk about execution. Lesson 7. If you guys have followed along from 1 to 6 and you've been really drilling down the 1 to 6 lesson, execution just comes natural. You don't even need to actually overthink it in any kind of manner, but we're actually going to go through it so you guys have a little bit of perspective because there is still a little bit of focus. We should have some focus in there, and it all comes down to the control and the intent that we're actually having during the execution. So we want to control down, explode up, and stay braced throughout. Okay, so starting with the control and controlling the descent especially is really going to help us to not only hold tension into the setup and reinforce the tension into the setup, but it's also going to help us to keep the bar path in line with our midfoot. If we're dive bombing and we're rushing the descent, we don't have that opportunity to actually generate tension, and we will have a lot more chances of actually having the bar drift forward or drift back. And besides that, we're giving a lot of momentum to the bar, a lot of downward momentum, which our body needs to actually fight back within the ascent. Okay, so we want to control the descent so we can actually build tension. You're going to see this in this particular video. Okay, so again, checklist. Brace on top, having the lats engaged. I'm pulling the bar into me, rooting my feet, going through the arm rack, walking out and letting each step settle and getting my stance, fixing my gaze. I'm not letting all the air out. I'm still letting some air out in there, and watch the descent. Do you see how the barbell is still within my midfoot? So let's watch it again. So I'm rebracing, going down. The bar is tracking within my midfoot, and watch how speedy the ascent is. Easy finish. Because I've controlled the bar path, I've kept my joints in the best possible position for the best possible leverage, and after that I just exploded up. Okay, so controlling the descent will be absolutely paramount to generating the most strength possible because it keeps everything together. Now, in the bottom position, very important, brace has to be intact. There should be no kind of collapsing within the brace. Most people lose the brace within the descent and especially at the bottom. And that happens, I'm getting back to the idea of making sure you're actually setting up in position before the arm rack, you're holding as much of that tension in there. When you're walking out, you're rooting your feet, you're holding as much of that tension in there. When you're rebracing, you're not letting all the air out, you're still holding some of that pressure in there. The more opportunity you have to actually hold that tension in there, the more opportunity you actually have to hold the brace at the bottom, where it actually matters the most. Okay, so bracing and keeping the brace intact, you can focus on it, but if the rest of those steps are not respected, you're probably going to have more chances of actually losing the brace at the bottom position. The knees have to track over toes, and if your root is good, your knees will track over your toes. From a depth perspective, if we're training for competition standard, which I'm pretty sure most of you are actually training for competition standard, the hip crease has to be below the knee. Okay, so you kind of have to sync it. The hips, chest, and bar stay stacked in line. Okay, because the brace is there, because the lat tension is there, because the bar is actually becoming one with us. During the ascent, even though the ascent is very easy, if you have all the steps that I've actually laid out so far, the execution is easy. But this is where, during the ascent, the root of your feet matter the most, because that's when you're actually pressing the most against the floor. Okay, so during the arm rack, during the step out, during the descent, the root is actually helping you to hold stability. But right now, the root is not only helping with stability, it's also helping with the force production against the barbell. So this is where you really need to focus on making sure that you're having that big toe, small toe, and heel pressure against the ground. You want to keep the brace tight, okay? Avoid exhaling, or at least try not to exhale fully. If you are to exhale, at least do it after the sticking point, near the lockout. Nothing wrong in exhaling, but just making sure that when you're exhaling, you're not letting all the air out, and you're not exhaling when you're at the bottom. Okay, so make sure that you're still holding, because especially when there is like a very grindy squat and you're getting just around this sticking point, a little bit of exhale is going to help with more contraction of your abs, with more contraction of your brace. So letting just a little bit of air out in some circumstances such as this, for some people, is helpful to actually, go over that sticking point. It doesn't really apply to everyone, but if you're that kind of individual, don't exhale fully. You're going to collapse everything over you. Okay? Hips and chest rise together, and the bar travels straight up, not forward. Now, with that, when we're talking about bar efficiency, again, midfoot is a range. So even though we like to have straight lines and just go through the straight lines, we don't necessarily need to be in a perfectly straight line. Okay? Any kind of forward drift indeed can be wasted energy and lost lifts. But if it is within your midfoot point, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Okay, so just a slight natural curve of the line is okay, but it should be minimized. Okay, as long as you're focusing on your root, as long as you're focusing on your lat tension, as long as you're focusing on your brace, it should come natural. It should, you shouldn't really worry about that. But remember, have that third eye that's actually looking from the side and making sure that the bar is actually tracking within midfoot as you're doing the execution. Now, breathing during execution, again, I'm stressing this a lot of times, but I really want to nail this down. Don't dump all the air out during the repetition. Exhale slightly if needed at the top range, but maintain the pressure and rebrace fully between reps only if needed. Okay? As performance points, eye gazed, okay, fixed forward, not drifting around. Elbows stay stable under the bar. Hands need to be firm on the barbell, okay, so don't open them up. Feet have to remain rooted throughout the full repetition. As common mistakes, you already know them. Dive bombing in the hole, losing all the tension that you've actually lost, shifting the center of mass all over the place, trying to save it somehow. All these are actually interconnected. If you're dive bombing into the hole and you're losing the, let's say, the center of mass, you're going to lose the brace. Your hips will rise faster than the chest. You're going to turn it into a stripper squat. The bar path will drift forward as a result. Not necessarily exhaling fully during the lift, but it's going to be a shit show. You're going to turn the squat into a good morning, and that's not something that we want. But another common mistake is exhaling fully during the lift, which makes you lose all that stability. You start to actually fall forward, and maybe some ouchie around your lumbar after that, and potentially stay at home for a couple of weeks. I don't think you want that. Okay, so the way we can actually drill execution, we can actually teach our body to hold as much tension and hold and control pretty much the center of mass is going to be the tempo squats and pause squats. There is nothing that these two can't solve. And we're going to get into, when we get to troubleshooting and fixes, I'm going to give you like a framework of potential, let's say, variations that's going to help you to solve certain issues. But pretty much the tempo squat with a 3 to 5 second descent and exploding up is really going to teach you to build tension through the descent and being patient with the descent. And the pause squat with, pausing to 2 to 3 seconds at the bottom is really going to teach you to control the center of mass through the ascent, so through the execution, but also teach you to hold the brace at the bottom. So it builds control, it reinforces the brace, and fixes any kind of rushing. So if you find yourself in a situation in which you have trouble with the execution, you need to have this. There is no question about it. You need these variations to make sure that you're as solid as possible. As a summary, control the descent. Don't dive bomb. Don't be a dickhead. Brace intact at the bottom, knees tracking. Explode up, hips and chest rise together. The bar path should be vertical over midfoot. Again, midfoot is a range. It's not a fixed point. Drill it with tempo and pauses so you can actually excel with your execution. Next, we're going to get into some variations and individual differences. So I'll catch you on the next one.